is a long one.
Ugh.
Sorry, you guys. But it's a very interesting topic. We are doing the Salem witch trials.
Dun, dun, dun.
This took a lot of research and a lot of information. Like I said, this will be a long one, but it's very important in history.
Very important. Oh, am I starting?
Well, kind of.
Did I burn
Just
it?
trying to light things on fire.
I didn't mean to. Am I starting?
Well, your second
The white?
Yeah.
Okay. While witch trials had begun to fade out across much of Europe by the mid-17th century, they continued on the fringes of Europe and in American colonies. The events in 1692 and 1693 in Salem became a brief outburst of a sort of hysteria in the New World, while the practice was already waning in most of Europe.
I guess popular belief they did not burn witches here, they only did it in Europe.
Yeah, didn't they hang them here?
Yeah, they like hung them and drowned them and stuff. In August, modern sadism, 1668, Joseph Glenville claimed that he could prove the existence of witches and ghosts of the supernatural realm. Glenville wrote about the denial of the bodily resurrection and the supernatural spirits.
Yeah? Are you sure?
Kind of.
Kind of. In his treatise, Glanville claimed that ingenious? Is that ingenious?
Mm-hmm.
Oh. Men should believe in witches and apparitions. If they doubted the reality of spirits, they not only denied demons, but also the Almighty God.
Dun, dun, dun.
Gladville wanted to prove that the supernatural could not be denied. Those who did deny apparitions were considered heretics, for it also disproved their beliefs in angels. Works by men such as Glanville and Cotton Mather tried to prove that demons were alive.
Now there is the religion Wicca, which is witches, but this is a totally different type of witch. This is supposed to be like a spiritual, bullshit. The trials were started after people had been accused of witchcraft, primarily by teenage girls such as Elizabeth Hubbard, 17, as well as some who were younger. I don't know if you guys watched or read The Crucible. It's a pretty good play.
I read it in high school, I think, but it was
I
a
own
long time ago.
I own it. Like the book.
The earliest recorded witchcraft execution was that of, is that Alce or Alcey?
I think it's Alce.
Alce Young in 1647 in Hartford, Connecticut.
Yeah, we're going way back.
Historian Clarence F. Jewett, that's funny, included a list of other people executed in New England in his 1881 book.
New England had been settled by religious refugees seeking to build a pure, Bible-based society. They lived closely with the sense of the supernatural. Yeah, the Puritans back then were very religious.
The original 1629 Royal Charter of the Massachusetts Bay Colony was vacated in 1684, after which King James II installed Sir Edmund Andros as the governor of the Dominion of New England. Andros was ousted in 1689 after the Glorious Revolution in England replaced the Catholic James II with the Protestant co-rulers William and Mary. Interesting. I did not know that.
Simon Bradstreet and Thomas Danforth, the colony's last leaders under the old charter, resumed the post as governor and deputy governor, but lacked constitutional authority to rule because the old charter had been vacated.
At the same time, tensions erupted between the English colonists settling in the eastward and the present-day coast of Maine, and French-supported Wabanaki Indians of that territory in what came to be known as King William's War. Very interesting.
This was 13 years after the devastating King Philip's War with the Wampanoag and other Wabanaki and other indigenous tribes in southern and eastern New England. In October 1690, Sir William Phipps led an unsuccessful attack on French-held Quebec.
Will you crack your windows so there's some airflow? Between 1689 and 1692, Native Americans continued to attack many English settlements along the Maine coast, leading to the abandonment of some of the settlements and resulting in a flood of refugees into areas like Essex County.
I would attack you too if you took over my land.
Hell yeah. They should always attack when somebody does that.
A new charter for the enlarged province of Massachusetts Bay was given final approval in England on October 16th, 1691. Yesterday we were talking about 1800s, now we're talking about 1600s. News of the appointment of Phipps and the new governor reached Boston in late January, and a copy of the new charter reached Boston on February 8th, 1692.
Phipps arrived in Boston on May 14th and was sworn in as governor 2 days later, along with Lieutenant Governor William Stoughton.
One of the first orders of business for the new governor and council on May 27, 1692 was the formal nomination of county justices of the peace, sheriffs, and commissioner of a special court of oyer and terminer.
I don't know.
To handle the large numbers of people who were thronging the jails. Thronging. That was a quote, so.
Paul Boyer and Stephen Nissenbaum, that's a fun last name, have postulated that without a valid charter, the colony had no legitimate form of government to try capital cases until Phipps arrived with the new charter.
It would have been an interesting time back then. This has been disputed by David Kong. He points out that between charters, according to the records of the Court of Assistance, the colony tried and condemned a group of 14 pirates on January 27, 1690, for acts of piracy and murder committed in August and October of 1689. So there was a government. He was trying to say there wasn't a government.
There wasn't until Phipps arrived.
Yeah, but that was after. That's what they were saying, though, after they were disputed. That there was.
Salem Village, present-day Danvers, Massachusetts, was known for its fractious population, who had many internal disputes, and for disputes between the village and Salem town, present-day Salem.
Arguments about property lines, grazing rights, and church privileges were rife, and neighbors considered the population as quarrelsome.
That's a fun word.
I like that word.
In 1672, the villagers had voted to hire a minister of their own, apart from Salem town. The first two ministers, James Bailey from 1673 to 1679, and George Burroughs from 1680 to 83, stayed only for a few years each, departing after the congregation failed to pay their full rate. Burroughs was subsequently arrested at the height of the witchcraft hysteria and was hanged as a witch in August 1692.
Anybody that didn't agree with them, they hung, basically.
So you could say anybody was a witch. Anybody. If you even said that somebody was a witch, it didn't even matter if you had a reason. They would be hanged. That was it. That was all they needed. Well, they would test them
by drowning them.
Yeah, if they live, they're a witch, and if they die, they were a witch.
Which we'll get into. Despite the minister's rights being upheld by the general court and the parish being admonished, each of the two ministers still chose to leave the third minister, Deodat Lawson, who was born in 1684 and died in 1688, stayed for a short time, leaving after the church in Salem refused to ordain him, and therefore not over issues with congregation.
Was he killed as a witch too?
Probably, because he went against them.
Here. The parish disagreed about Salem Village's choice of Samuel Parris as its first ordained minister. On June 18, 1689, the villagers agreed to hire Parris for €66 annually. That's not a lot. 1/3 part in money and the other 2/3 part in provisions and the use of parsonage. Not really sure what parsonage is anymore. I know what personage is.
On October 10th, 1689, however, they raised his benefits, voting to grant him the deed to the parsonage and 2 acres. Maybe that's the church.
I'm going to look it up anyway.
0.8 hectares of land. You want me to read?
I'll read. This conflicted with a 1681 village resolution which stated that it shall not be lawful for the inhabitants of this village to convey the houses or lands or any other concerns belonging to the ministry to any particular persons or person, not for any cause by vote or otherwise. Oh, parsonage is a church house provided for the member of the clergy.
Though the prior minister's faith and level of contention in Salem village was valid, reasons for caution in accepting the position, Reverend Parris increased the village's divisions by delaying its acceptance. He did not seem able to settle his new parishioners disputes by deliberately seeking out inquest behaviors in his congregation and making church members in good standing suffer public penance for small infractions. He contributed significantly to the tension within the village. Its bickering increased in inhabited. Historian Marion Starkey suggested that in this atmosphere, serious conflict may have been inevitable.
Prior to the constitutional turmoil of the 1680s, Massachusetts government had been dominated by conservative Puritan secular leaders. Influenced by Calvinism, the Puritans had opposed many of the traditions of the Church of England, including the use of the Book of Common Prayer, the use of clergy vestments during services, and the use of sign of the cross at baptism and kneeling to receive communion, all of which they believed constituted popery.
Popery.
Interesting.
King Charles I was hostile to this viewpoint, and Anglican church officials tried to repress these dissenting views during the 1620s and 1630s.
Some Puritans and other religious minorities had sought refuge in the Netherlands, but ultimately many made a major migration to colonial North America to establish their own society. Excuse me. I didn't bring my bag.
These immigrants, who were mostly constituted of families, established several of the earliest colonies in New England, of which the Massachusetts Bay Colony was the largest and most economically important. They intended to build a society based on their religious beliefs.
Colonial leaders were elected by the freemen of the colony, those individuals who had their religious experiences formally examined and had been admitted to one of the colony's Puritan congregations. The colonial's leadership were prominent members of their congregations and regularly consulted with local ministers on issues facing the colony.
It's really getting windy out there.
Yeah.
In the early 1640s, England erupted in civil war. The Puritan-dominated parliamentarians emerged victorious, and the crown was supplemented by the Protectorate of Oliver Cromwell in 1653. His failure led to the restoration of the old order under Charles II.
Immigration to New England slowed significantly in these years. In Massachusetts, a successful merchant class began to develop that was less religiously motivated than the colony's earlier settlers.
Conflict in religion. An overwhelming majority of people accused and convicted of witchcraft were women, about 78% overall. The Puritan belief in prevailing New England culture was that women were inherently sinful and more susceptible to domination than men were.
What the hell?
Damnation, not domination.
Damnation. I was going to say domination? Really?
No,
Throughout
damnation.
their daily lives, Puritans, especially Puritan women, actively attempted to thwart attempts by the devil to overtake them and their souls. Indeed, Puritans held the belief that men and women were equal in the eyes of God and not in the eyes of the devil. Interesting.
Women's souls were seen as unprotected in their weak and vulnerable bodies. Several factors may explain why women were more likely to admit guilt of witchcraft than men. Historian Elizabeth Reese asserts that some likely believed that they had truly given in to the devil, and others might have believed that they had done so temporarily. However, because those who confessed were reintegrated into society, some women might have confessed in order to spare their own lives. So if you confessed, they would pray over you and you were able to be saved. But if you denied it, then you were automatically a witch and they would hang you.
Well, then I would have automatically been like, yeah,
Yep,
yeah.
I'm totally a witch.
I'm a witch, yep. Pray over me, give me communion, whatever you need to do, fix it. Just so I wouldn't be killed.
Exactly. That's what the smart thing would have been to do. But then you looked bad to the settlers.
Well, they still look bad on you
Yeah.
afterwards because you used to be a witch.
Mm-hmm. So I said either way you looked bad to the Puritans. So.
Quarrels with neighbors often incited witchcraft allegations. That's what we were talking about already.
Mm-hmm.
One example of this is Abigail Faulkner, who was accused in 1692. Faulkner admitted she was angry at what folks said, and the devil may have temporarily overtaken her, causing harm to her neighbors. Alrighty then.
Women who did not conform to the norms of Puritan society were more likely to be the target of an accusation, especially those who were unmarried or did not have children.
Huh. Well, that's interesting. Prior to 1692, there had been rumors of witchcraft in villages neighboring Salem Village and other towns. Cotton Mather, a minister of Boston's North Church, not to be confused with later Anglican North Church associated with Paul Revere, was a prolific publisher of pamphlets, including some that expressed his belief in witchcraft. In his book Memorable Providences Relating to Witchcraft and Possessions in 1689, Mathers described his oracular observations and how stupendous witchcraft had affected the children of Boston Mason John Goodwin. So yours actually starts there, not up there.
Mm-hmm. Mather illustrates how the Goodwin's eldest child had been tempted by the devil and had stolen linen from the washerwoman, Goody Glover. Glover, of Irish Catholic descent, was characterized as a disagreeable old woman and described by her husband as a witch. This may have been why she was accused of casting spells on the Goodwin children.
That's ridiculousness. Oh, goodness. Oh, see, that's why, because I didn't see the word. I was looking for the word children. After the event, 4 out of 6 Goodwin children began to have strange fits, and what some people referred to as the disease of astonishment. What the hell is the disease of astonishment? The manifestations attributed to the disease quickly became associated with witchcraft.
Of course.
Ooh.
Here's the symptoms, you guys. Symptoms include neck and back pains. I've got witchcraft. Tongues being drawn from their throats, and loud, random outcries. Other symptoms include having no control over their bodies, such as becoming limber, flapping their arms like birds, or trying to harm others, as well as themselves. These symptoms would fuel the craze of 1692. I am making back pain. I'm being cursed.
We're witches.
I'm being cursed by a witch.
We're witches. We're witches.
I am Wiccan, so it's possible.
In Salem Village, in February of 1692, Betty Paris, age 9, and her cousin Abigail Williams, age 11, the daughter and niece respectively of Reverend Samuel Paris, I thought it sounded familiar, began to have fits described as beyond the power of epileptic fits or natural disease to affect by John Hale, the minister of the nearby town of Beverly.
As the crucible begins.
Now, in Sabrina the Teenage Witch, you ever see that show? They did a whole thing on the Salem witch trials and stuff. And in that, they explained that people were having fake fits.
Oh, yeah, that was
and saying, this person is making me do these things.
Yeah, they'd be like, oh my god, she's over there. I see her. She's calm as a crow or something. It's all a bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
The girls screamed, they threw things about the room, uttered strange sounds, crawled under furniture, and contorted themselves into peculiar positions, according to the eyewitnesses' account of Reverend Deodat Lawson, a former minister in Salem Village. Yeah, it's just, a lot of times it was to get out of doing chores, too. It is not to just get, like, the children, for God's sakes.
You can't believe children when it comes to shit like that. They make shit up anyway. I mean, there's nothing wrong with children making things up, but that's what they do, because they're still learning what's, like,
It's like, oh, Sarah Good looked at me funny. It's time for me to say she's a witch, because she thought I was being a little shit and looked at me funny.
The girls complained of being pinched and pricked with pins. A doctor historically assumed to be William Griggs could find no physical evidence of any ailment. Exactly, because it wasn't happening.
But it wasn't physical, it was spiritual.
Ooh.
Other young women in the village began to exhibit similar behaviors because they saw that. When Lawson preached as a guest in the Salem Village meeting house, he was interrupted several times by outbursts of afflicted.
Of course he was.
Because they were bored of his preaching. God, he's preaching again.
I want to get out of this. What do I do? The first 3 people accused and arrested for allegedly afflicting Betty Parrish, Abigail Williams, 12-year-old Ann Putnam Jr. Junior? Girls had junior?
Yeah, it can be a junior.
Oh. And Elizabeth Hubbard were Sarah Good, Sarah Osborne, and Tituba, with Tituba being the first. Now, see, I've actually heard about this.
Yeah, so I said the crucible.
Yeah, I've actually read about those exact people.
It's crucible.
That's kind of cool.
Some historians believe that the accusations of Ann Putnam Jr. suggest that family feud may have been a major cause of the witch trials. At the time, a vicious rivalry was underway between the Putnam and Porter families, one which deeply polarizes the people of Salem. Oh my goodness.
Can you read? Can you read? Can you read? Where are we? Oh. Citizens would often have heated debates which escalated into full-fledged fighting based solely on their opinion of the feud.
Good was a homeless beggar known to seek food and shelter from neighbors. She was accused of witchcraft because of her appalling reputation. Because she was a beggar. Because she was poor.
At her trial, she was accused of rejecting Puritan ideals of self-control and discipline when she chose to torment and scorn children instead of leading them towards the path of salvation. Jeez.
Like I said, little shit. Sarah Osborne rarely attended church meetings. She was accused of witchcraft because the Puritans believed that Osborne had her own self-interest in mind.
Oh, yes.
Following her remarriage to an indentured servant, the citizens of the town disapproved of her trying to control her son's inheritance from her previous marriage.
Tituba, a South American Indian slave by way of the West Indies, likely became a target because of her ethnic differences from most of the other villagers. She was accused of attracting girls like Abigail Williams and Betty Paris with stories of enchantment from Malleus Maleficarum. I probably butchered those words, but they looked familiar.
Where?
Malleus
Malice Maleficarium.
Maleficarum, I guess. I don't know.
I know malice is like bad, but like, evil thoughts.
Well, that's not how malice is spelled. That's why I said it's Malleus.
These tales about sexual encounters with demons swaying the minds of men and fortune-tellings were said to stimulate the imaginations of the girls and made Tituba an obvious target of accusations. It wasn't the fact that she was a slave and different from them.
No, of course not. Why would that be? Each of these women was a kind of outcast and exhibited many of the character traits typical of the usual suspects for witchcraft accusations. They were left to defend themselves, brought before the local magistrates on the complaint of witchcraft. They were interrogated for several days, starting on March 1st, 1692, then sent to jail.
In March, others were accused of witchcraft. Martha Corey, child Dorothy Good, and Rebecca Nurse in Salem Village, and Rachel Clinton in nearby Ipswich.
Ipswich. Martha Corey had expressed skepticism about the credibility of the girls' accusations and thus drawn attention. The charges against her and Rebecca Nurse deeply troubled the community because Martha Corey was a full covenanted member of the church in Salem Village, as was Rebecca Nurse in the church in Salem Town.
If such upstanding people could be witches, the townspeople thought that anybody could be a witch, and church members was no protection from accusation.
Dorothy Good, the daughter of Sarah Good, was only 4 years old, but was not exempted from questioning by the magistrates. Her answers were construed as a confession that implicated her mother. For God's sake, a 4-year-old? Really? A 4-year-old? Let's believe a 4-year-old who makes shit up even more than the 10-year-olds.
I saw Mommy fly the other day. I saw her.
In your dreams, kid. In your dreams.
In Ipswich, Rachel Clinton...
Ipswich.
It's so weird. Rachel Clinton was arrested for witchcraft at the end of March on independent charges unrelated to the affliction of the girls in Salem Village. Try to need to slow down.
Really not.
Anyway.
When Sarah Cloyce, Nurse's sister, and Elizabeth Bassett, Proctor, were arrested in April, they were brought before John Hawthorne and Jonathan Corwin at a meeting in Salem Town.
When Sarah Cloyce, Nurse's sister... Oh, wait. That's what you just read. The men were both local magistrates and also members of the Governor's Council. Present for the examination were Deputy Governor Thomas Dunworth and Assistant Samuel Sewall, Samuel Appleton, James Russell, and Isaac Addington. Objections by Elizabeth's husband, John Proctor, during the proceedings resulted in his arrest that day.
Dun, dun, dun.
So if you object, you get arrested.
Obviously, you're a witch for objecting. How dare you?
Probably.
Within a week, Giles Corey, Martha's husband, and a covenanted church member in Salem Town, Abigail Hobbs, Bridget Bishop, Mary Warren, a servant in the Proctor household and sometime accuser, and Deliverance Hobbs, what's her name, stepmother of Abigail Hobbs, were arrested and examined. Deliverance. That's a name?
Well, she was in Deliverance. Abigail Hobbs, Mary Warren, and Deliverance Hobbs all confessed and began naming additional people as accomplices. I would too if I would not die.
Right.
More arrests followed. Sarah Wilds, William Hobbs, husband of Deliverance and father of Abigail, Nehemiah Abbott Jr., Mary...
Oh, Nehemiah.
Nehemiah? That's kind of a
Nehemiah.
cool name.
Nehemiah.
Abbott Jr., Mary Esty, sister of Cloyce and nurse, Edward Bishop Jr. and his wife Sarah Bishop, and Mary English. That's kind of a cool name.
Nehemiah? I've always liked that name.
It's different.
It's a Bible name.
That's Jeremiah, not Nehemiah.
No, Nehemiah's in the Bible too. I promise. Look it up. On April 30th, Reverend George Burroughs, Lydia Dustin, Susanna Martin, Dorcas Hoare. Dorcas Hoare! Dorcas Hoare! I'm sorry. That's an awful name. Dorcas Hoare. God. Sarah Morey and Philip English, Mary's husband, were arrested.
There's gotta be a different way of saying it. There's gotta be.
We should look up Dorcas. Maybe it's like Dorcas or something. So
because
it's
even in that one we read before,
yeah,
it was
and it's
Dorcas.
spelled the same way.
It's Dorcas. So
Dorcas.
Nehemiah, right?
Nehemiah
Abbott Jr. was released because the accusers agreed she was not the person whose specter had afflicted them. Specters like their spirit, you guys.
Specters are the ones who are apparently walking up and pinching the girls. It's like, what do they call that? When you leave your body?
Astral projection.
Astral projection. That's basically what they were talking about. When they called it a specter, they meant that person's spirit left their body and came and pinched them or poked them or made them do stupid shit.
I'm poking you.
Ow, what the hell? Where? Here? Mary Easty was released for a few days after her initial arrest because the accusers failed to confirm that it was she who had afflicted them. She had been arrested again when the accusers reconsidered. Uh-oh.
In May, accusations continued to pour in, but some of these suspects began to evade apprehension. Multiple warrants were issued before John Willard and Elizabeth Colson were apprehended. George Jacobs Jr. and Daniel Andrews were not caught.
John Jacobs Jr. Sorry. Until this point, all the proceedings were investigative. But on May 27, 1692, William Phipps ordered the establishment of a special court of oyer and terminer for Suffolk, Essex, and Middlesex counties to prosecute the cases of those in jail.
Warrants were issued for more people. Sarah Osborne, one of the first three persons accused, died in jail on May 10, 1692.
Warrants were issued for 36 more people, with examinations continuing to take place in Salem Village. Sarah Dustin, daughter of Lydia Dustin, Anne Sears, Bethia Carter Sr., and her daughter Bethia Carter Jr.